Danielle and Teresa didn't know each other. They lived nearly 150 miles apart with different lives, different hopes, different dreams. But their relatives insist the same tragedy touched both their lives and deaths. They say they were both victims of domestic abuse and failed by the police. This is a story of two families who will never have the full answers. Danielle Charters-Christie was the oldest of 4 children. Her family say she loved to learn, had a deep passion for animals, and made their lives complete. But her parents say things started to change when she moved to Gloucestershire to live with her partner. And 7 years later, in February 2021, it was not the police who told Danielle's parents of her sudden death, but the partner's father over the phone.
Danielle's dad was at home and I just saw he just put his head in his hands and I just knew. I asked the partner how Danielle had done this and he said, "I'm not telling you." So I said, "I don't understand why you're not telling me." He swore and said that Danielle had hung herself.
Gloucestershire police spent just 55 minutes at the scene where Danielle had died before ruling her death a suicide. She'd experienced depression when much younger, but was said to be in a good place and making plans for the future.
More and more people started contacting me, telling me that they feared, that this may have been an argument that had got out of hand. One of her best friends telling me how badly the partner had treated my daughter.
Hours before Danielle's death, her partner had sent a message to her friend saying he'd discovered she was seeing someone else.
No one was questioned about her death.
No.
When her mother managed to get hold of an officer, she was told Danielle's partner had been cautioned by the force for assaulting her in the past. But her pleas for the police to investigate and to conduct a forensic post-mortem, she says, fell on deaf ears.
One officer said, "We're going to have to agree to disagree, Caroline. Your daughter committed suicide. I've been called hostile by the police."
Caroline also learned that the partner's father, a local funeral director, was allowed to personally transport Danielle's body from where she was found to the mortuary under police escort. A decision approved by Gloucestershire Coroner's Office, one her family say is deeply inappropriate.
And the police also allowed the father to stop off his house to get changed on the way to the mortuary. I am absolutely disgusted and outraged. A young 25-year-old girl who's fit and well, who's in a domestic abuse relationship, that is found dead after her partner's just discovered she's been seeing another man, and then they allow the father to remove her body. It should never happen, and I will make sure it never ever happens again.
Gloucestershire Coroner's Office told Channel 4 News that it would be entirely inappropriate to comment further. Danielle's partner's father later told police that he requested to transfer Danielle's body because he viewed her as family and they were undertakers, and that he wanted to get changed and dressed properly out of respect. Police did eventually arrest Danielle's partner on suspicion of murder more than a year later, but he was released without charge, police telling Caroline that there wasn't enough evidence to pursue a case. We've made repeated requests for comment from both Danielle's former partner and his father, but are yet to receive a response. An external review of Gloucestershire Police's investigation into Danielle's death, seen by Channel 4 News, found that police had failed to forensically examine the porch where her body was found. By the time of her boyfriend's arrest more than a year later, the porch had been dismantled, with Danielle's boyfriend saying he'd disposed of the caravan they had shared in the months after her death. On whether there was third-party involvement, the review listed several possibilities as to how she may have died, including that she was killed, but that the evidence is simply not available and not likely to ever become available, leaving several unanswered questions that cannot and will not ever be answered.
You cannot go back and lock that scene down. The golden hour has gone. However, I want to see accountability, and if that's accountability from the police, then that is what I'm going to fight for. And I honestly do believe that my daughter gives me strength to carry on doing this.
Yeah. What do you think she makes of all of this?
She'd be saying, come on, Mum, keep going. Yeah.
This is a very difficult case. It has complexities and nuances to it.
Gloucestershire Police agreed to an interview with us to discuss what they stressed they could about Danielle's case.
When we look back at that with the benefit of hindsight, it is clear that there have been evidential opportunities that have not been taken. If on attendance at the scene we had adopted a broader mindset where we had considered the potential for coercive controlling behaviour, the potential for domestic abuse, we may have taken a different course of action, and that may have led to us securing evidence, and the outcome could have been different.
Danielle's family were appalled by the fact that the father of the man they say was abusing their daughter, they suspect of abusing their daughter, was allowed to transfer her body to the mortuary in his capacity as undertaker. Can you clarify the police role in this and what you make of it?
A request was made to us at the scene. That request was escalated to the coroner. That's normal practice. The coroner made a decision to allow the transfer of the body to take place in that way, with the caveat that it was escorted at all times by 2 police officers, which was done.
What I'm hearing from you now is that actually you don't think there's much necessarily wrong with the way that this was dealt with initially in those initial stages.
There's no doubt that the transfer of the body was unusual.
And deeply inappropriate, given that the partner was later arrested and interviewed on suspicion of murder, that his father would be the person to handle and transport the body to the mortuary.
As the reviews into this case have demonstrated, there are things that we could have and should have done differently, and there are certainly lessons for us all to learn.
I understand that you've apologised to the family privately. Do you want to take this opportunity to apologise publicly?
Certainly. In terms of the service that we offer, we could have offered a better service. Caroline has had to campaign and had to challenge the organisation and the force quite extensively, and no one should have to go through that.
A decade ago, a Home Office study asked forensic pathologists to reinvestigate 32 unexpected deaths that police had decided were not suspicious. 10 were eventually classed as homicides and 5 were suspicious deaths requiring further investigation. The study raises serious questions about police decision-making at the scene of unexplained deaths, saying apparent and obvious indicators of suspicion were overlooked. Campaigners say that this is still happening, and particularly in the cases of women who are known to have suffered from domestic abuse. And there are growing calls for those deaths to be treated as suspicious from the very start.
They have failed Teresa prior to her death and after her death.
Lorna McMahon's niece Teresa, an ITV journalist and mother of 1, was found dead in 2021, just months after Danielle.
Hello?
Is that Teresa?
Yes.
It was weeks before her death that Teresa had this conversation with Greater Manchester Police.
He's also broke my fingers, broke my ribs, just like generally just battered me and attacked me loads. He's obviously trying to, get in my life and stay in my life.
She'd been trying under Clare's law to find out about any previous domestic abuse on her recent ex-partner's file. Because the police said of resourcing issues, it was 9 days before she was visited by officers who said she didn't want police to take further action. She was also told wrongly that because the relationship had just ended, she couldn't access that information. Weeks later, police arrived at her home where her former partner told them he'd found her hanging.
And I just screamed and broke down crying at the thought of her going through some sort of pain, and I was riddled with confusion as well.
Teresa was described as having a history of mental health problems, but Lorna says police were too quick to come to a conclusion of suicide, alleging a number of police failings both before and after Teresa's death.
They've lost the body-worn camera footage.
Yes.
She's accused officers of failing to supply important information to the initial coroner looking into what had happened.
The coroner was unaware that there was any allegations of domestic violence made. I had to tell him, which I found, he stopped and he asked the police coroner's officer, is this true? And she said, yes.
The coroner eventually described Teresa as a vulnerable individual who was locked in a coercive and controlling relationship. But such are Lorna's concerns about Greater Manchester Police, a rare step was taken in moving Teresa's upcoming inquest from Manchester to London. Another coroner stating that suicide is one possible conclusion, but that the possibility that her death may have resulted from domestic abuse must be examined. Teresa's former partner has never been questioned in relation to her death. He didn't respond to our request for comment, but has previously denied any wrongdoing. A spokesperson for Greater Manchester Police told us that Lorna McMahon's complaints were subject to a live investigation and that the force were fully engaged with getting Teresa's loved ones the answers they deserve.
She was very, very clever, very witty, quite cheeky character. Her speciality was impersonating people. And I believe, I was informed at her funeral, that she did a very good impersonation of me.
Danielle was absolutely beautiful. She was bright, she was bubbly. She could turn a hand to absolutely anything. And as a family, we are just so proud of her and everything she achieved in such a short life.
Well, the Safeguarding Minister, Jess Phillips, told us her thoughts are with the families in these cases and others like them, and said the government will look at how it can improve how police handle sudden deaths like these. And if you have been affected by any of the issues in that report, you can seek help by going to channel4.com/support.